everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. We started on time today. This is not pre-recorded. I just want you to know that the guests were so fired up and punctual, professional, that there are just no tech issues. We were ready to go. It was just pre-show conversation beforehand. I'm very excited. I don't even have guests today. I just have the Red Zone crew, some faces you haven't seen in a while back on the show. So me personally, I'm super excited to prepare for this. I watched, and I had no idea this was even a thing. I watched the Netflix special that they did about the Pauls, the Untold Jake Paul story, which was just propaganda. But anyway, before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe, please hit like. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you are alerted whenever we go live. Like Wednesday, sometimes you guys forget we go live on Wednesday. Yes, am I commandeering White Guy Wednesday? Hell yeah. The white guys are busy right now, and I have to keep the show going. Can't stop just because the white guys are doing other white guy stuff, camping, whatever it is you people do. Also, I want to let you guys know this is the final week of fundraising for the feature-length documentary on the way we consume media, Kayfabe. There should be links in the chat being posted by wonderful mods. EDMT will show up in the chat. I know she's not going to be on the show tonight, but sometimes she does me the solid of showing up as a mod. I have a feeling she's probably just shutting it down tonight, as I don't know if she's going to be a go for tomorrow, which is going to be a real fun show tomorrow. We talk with a documentary filmmaker about his time in the Philippines with a Maoist, a revolutionary rebel Maoist sect in the Philippines in the documentary. So I'm excited for that. Maybe I can show some clips for you guys. Also, I want to send a massive shout out to all that do subscribe here on YouTube and Twitch and all the other audio only formats. Thank you guys so much. You are the fuel in the TIR machine that keeps this show going. Much love to the patrons. I was trying to do another movie night this week because it's Jeremy's birthday this week. So I figured we got a fun movie night for Jeremy's birthday. And also our guest last night, Eileen Giselle, said that she was down to watch Nightmare on Elm Street 2. So maybe we watch it next week, which is my birthday week. How awesome would that be? To watch my not favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie with all of you. It still is a fun romp. And Eileen said she would be down to come back on and watch a horror movie with us. That should be fun. We got to get Catherine Liu back. I think she's back in the country. We got to have a movie night with Catherine Liu. So the only way to be part of these things, champagne rooms past and present, movie nights, be part of the virtual live audience for the Pascal Robert hosted Mau Mau Hour. There's only one way, and that is become a patron for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year. It can all be yours. Now that I have all of that out of the way. Oh shit, there's two Jasons. I was going to bring in the co-host, but I'm just going to bring myself in twice. Double the arrogance, double the fun. He's been on the show a few times. He's one of my favorite people to talk politics and life with. Whenever I think, maybe I've lived a life. And people say, Jason, you should write a book. And I go, I don't know. And they keep telling me that, and then I believe them. Then I talk to Bill, and I go, my life ain't shit. Please welcome one of my favorite people in the world, Wild Bill Cody.
Hello.
That's true, Bill. People always say, Jason, you should write a book. And I'm like, have you met Bill?
I'm actually writing one right now. It's doing okay.
That's exactly. You're just trying to go back the last 5 years. You're like, damn, I just haven't even gotten back to 84 yet.
Yeah.
I since we're talking about Cleveland, or not Cleveland, we're talking about Ohio's favorite sons. I figured I'd bring in my version of Ohio's favorite sons. First and foremost, he's been with me the longest tenured Red Zone co-host. his on audio, the episode he was on about, war crimes in Afghanistan, doing great. Mac Attack.
What's up, gentlemen?
This man started this thing with me. We started this gangster shit. He was part of the Saturday crew. Me and Pascal were part of, I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday crew with his show. We're still very good friends. I'm still trying to convince this gentleman to move to Mexico to be my neighbor so we can really turn this into Chocolate City. Please welcome Marcus of the Left Flank Bets.
Yo. Which you cannot keep talking about the Paul brothers as like repping Ohio. It's like this. If the only thing I'm here for is to correct the record, like we do not claim them like Ohio, especially not like Columbus. Like unheard of.
When I went home last September, Marcus, like I told you, man, I hit a Guardians game. I was downtown, right? And like, there's always one like Paul brother dick rider for either brother, or maybe they ride for both because they ambidextrous.
They ride for both,
right? But right, these two knuckleheads, man, like you get their boys out there, and they're just like, yo, man, like I love these cats, and everybody in the bar, it's like record screech, and we're just like, what? Like, nah, don't even bring their names in here. Like
Candyman.
We are in downtown Cleveland after the Guardians dropped yet another game, right? Because it's Cleveland.
They're having a rough season, ain't it?
Oh, dude, we are. I don't even want to talk about it right now, bro. But like, you got these two knuckleheads, and if anybody in chat knows about Cleveland, like Cleveland's this great big sprawling blob right there on Lake Erie, and in this area, you have a bunch of suburbs and kind of like small unincorporated towns like Ohio City, right? That's technically in Cleveland, but it's called Ohio City, right? But then you have Shaker Heights, an area of Northeast Ohio, even pastier than me, and that's saying something, right? There's only one place pastier in Northeast Ohio, and that is Beechwood. And they, unfortunately, they used to call it Little Israel because, that's where a lot of the Jewish population moved to when they moved to Northeast Ohio. They consolidated themselves in Beechwood, and you had all these horrible people that would say that.
Is the Beechwood Ballroom in Beechwood?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know the owners there, and I've been to several shows. And
man, it's still kicking. Like the ballroom's still going. Like most of the good venues, like Jason and I we've talked about, is most of the good venues in Cleveland have shut down or got gobbled up by like the casino or the owner of the Cavs. So it's just
that is the story of so many places. Like I said, a lot of these posters behind me, many of these venues are no longer in existence. But let's get in. There's a few things I want to do tonight. I know I don't have you guys for that long. Marcus told me beforehand when I talked to him earlier today, he was like, look, Negro, I know how you get, and I'm not going to be here all night. I know how you and Mac. He goes, no.
You and Mac.
So I said
we get caught up into like the witching hours. You know what I'm saying?
And you have a new look. You don't even know about. So Bill and Mac. I want to let people know this before I even start the opening script. Bill and Mac have both fought professionally.
Yeah,
they've actually stepped on gloves. Okay, Bill only amateur.
I fought at the wild card, and we did 3 rounders. So. Pepper Roach, Freddie Roach's brother, was my trainer.
Oh, okay. Look, Max over here with the extras from Crüe training him with Mike Tyson's cut man. But regardless, both of these guys have actually strapped on gloves, taken some punches. The last episode, if you want to hear Mac talk about his time fighting, he actually talks about his time fighting. And we're definitely going to get into that. We're going to get into that. Marcus actually also lived with a professional fighter as well. So everybody on the screen has some history in combat sports. I taught for a very short time in a boxing fitness gym I'm nowhere near these guys' level. I'm way too pretty to get hit. But anyway, there is a narrative in the world of combat sports that boxing viewership is declining, with longtime home of boxing, HBO, declining to continue to air fights on their channel. Is that because we live in a time of viewer-curated viewing experiences or a lack of interest in the sport altogether? UFC has gained a lot of attention since Dana White pulled it out of the extreme fighting world to something more commonplace, making Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as common in gyms as karate was in the 80s. Dana White, a Suge Knight type character. I can't think of another president of a fighting league that is actually bigger than the league itself. In steps Jake and Logan Paul, social media celebrities that had a brief stint on Disney. The Pauls position themselves as disruptors to the combat sports industry, coming into fighting by challenging other YouTubers, but they have pivoted to fighting older MMA fighters to boxing matches. While these matches have gained some pay-per-view success, they are not the record-breaking claims that the Paul brothers throw out. Out of the top five pay-per-view events of all time, 4 are boxing matches. And none of the top 18 pay-per-view events of all time include any of the Paul brothers matches. The Paul brothers have seemed to do one thing right, and they learned it from the former 45th president, Donald Trump. Everyone loves the villain. To root for the bad guy or to see the perceived bad guy lose, being the antagonist has been financially advantageous for the Paul brothers. They were able to pivot from being online punching bags to literal punching bags, but it's paying off with massive dividends. Their fights bring in millions of dollars for them. And while they may challenge people like Dana White on his unfair pay structures, what do the Pauls truly offer? Are they trying to bring fairness in this carnival of sport, or just take the place of one of the biggest names in fighting? Let's not get it twisted. These guys don't care about labor rights or human rights, for that matter, having one of their fights in Saudi Arabia. Recently, Jake Paul said he was a great boxer because he brings people to watch his fights. On a recent Netflix documentary that was more of a propaganda short for the Paul fighting burgeoning empire, ex-champion Mike Tyson says he likes watching people that can bring butts in seats. So are the Pauls, by their very nature of being box office draws, great fighters? If being a YouTube influencer brings eyeballs to the ring, what does that mean for traditional fighters and up-and-comers if they can be leapfrogged on cards by people with less skill but more social media clout? I call on my brothers to discuss this, and I am opening up the phone lines. We're going to get a little discussion first. I figure if we get a little discussion first, it can piss you guys off listening enough. And then you can call in all angry, and you get to choose who you want to fight.
Well, I'd like to point out
Jason's gonna rename this the Jamal Rome Show.
You know, there's a couple of things that happened before the Paul brothers came into the breach, which is there hasn't been a decent American heavyweight in forever.
That's a good point.
I think that's affected boxing, incalculably. Anyway, very much so. The other thing that I mentioned earlier is like Floyd Mayweather's the one who started fighting these ridiculous exhibition fights. And one of the fights that you mentioned, that was one of the 5 biggest fights, was Floyd versus Conor McGregor. And as I mentioned to you, I remember because I used to, box out of the Wild Card Gym. I'm friends with Freddie Roach and that group. And Floyd went to Freddie and asked him, can you get Conor ready to fight and make it look like a show? And Freddie said, I don't think so. But he found somebody else to do it. I mean, Floyd carried him in that fight, but a lot of people watched that fight. It got
It's the second most watched fight of all time. I'll read you guys right now a list of the most watched fights on pay-per-view. And it is Mayweather versus Pacquiao. That was the fight we all waited for, and it happened too late, I think. Mayweather versus McGregor. UFC 229, which is a McGregor fight. De La Hoya versus Mayweather. And Mayweather versus Canelo. The one it was good. It's in 2013, it says.
Yeah, that
Well,
sounds about right.
and Floyd kicked off the Paul brothers run because he fought an exhibition with Logan.
Yeah.
You know, why is Floyd, fighting these people and giving them credibility? Because Floyd likes money and he doesn't like losing. So those are two of the reasons.
I mean, that's like, and something that you said, Bill, was like, there hasn't been a good heavyweight in, like decades, like, and that hurts boxing. Which, and like, I don't think I've ever really gone to the violent video games and violent movies type of argument. But I do think that if like that type of thing has any real effect on culture, it is it's readjusting the tolerance for violence for the audience, and in which case, boxing loses that appeal, that violent appeal, because the audience is destigmatized, amongst of other things, and of course UFC being one of those things, like, or at least Pride Fighting Championships and
Mhm.
all that type of stuff starts raising up, and yeah, you see people, I think, want more spectacle, um, and kind of like going away from that, and literally, like, because like that's what it's like, you see it where people are buying into spectacle, and whether, because like, and that's where too, it's like, I'm actually kind of impressed with like the way Floyd Mayweather fights as a very more like technical fucking fighter. Not, like, he's not knocking people out, like getting in like these exciting bouts. He's fucking playing defense and and taking shots when he can and wins off fucking points. Like, that's
Yeah,
not exactly exciting, but still he's getting those views, and that's like personality. That's people buying into the fact that it's like, is he going to lose is now his shtick.
Well,
And
are people viewing? Can I ask you guys this? Are people viewing to watch him lose, much like they view the
I think so, yes.
Pauls? You
Well,
think
I
so?
mean, the big thing with Floyd now is he doesn't, like, he went out on top. He beat Marciano's record, right? Or he tied it. So he doesn't fight real fights anymore. Like Bill had mentioned, he did that bullshit exhibition against like the Japanese kickboxer, you know? Um, and the thing is, it's like, and I tell people this all the time, there is a huge difference from throwing a punch when you're a boxer than there is when you're throwing a punch with 4-ounce gloves on in an MMA cage, right? When you're only wearing 4-ounce gloves, you are not going balls out. You'll break your hands in the first round and you're done,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, and on top of that, it's like wearing cotton. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like having 2 little pieces of cotton on the back of your hands, right? Go
Do they
ahead
even
and
get hand wraps in
Well,
UFC? Do you get
yeah,
hand wraps?
yeah, they
Well,
do. But
here's
you wear 13-ounce gloves, man. I'm telling you right now, like during the McGregor Mayweather fight, you could tell McGregor was gassed by the 3rd round because he couldn't keep his hands up anymore. Right? He's
yeah.
not used to wearing 13-ounce gloves, and that's, there's other intricacies in the differences between boxing and mixed martial arts. Like, they're both amazing things, right? Amazing athletes are competing in these sports, but I really wish we would stop trying to connect the two because they're
Mm.
2 totally different games.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
and most MMA guys can't break an egg. I hate to tell you.
Mhm.
They're great at that jiu-jitsu wrestling. But I want to throw in one thing that happened years ago at the Wild Card is when they had the celebrity boxing, we had Greg Brady training in the gym for a while.
You mean
And
the guy that played Greg Brady?
yeah, and he fought Screech. And the
Oh
first
shit!
the first
Oh
time they
my!
had celebrity boxing, the ratings were through the roof.
Yeah.
They were like American Idol. And afterwards, somebody asked Freddie, it's like, well, why do you think that happened? And Freddie goes, because everybody likes a good fight. And in some ways, what the Paul brothers do, I mean, I sent you guys a note. I mean, I watched that way too much of that Nate Diaz Jake Paul
You were
fight.
breaking down game film.
And neither one of them, they both have their hands down and they don't have any head movement and they're just whacking each other. And there is a certain level of like it's like a street brawl. They're just, beating the crap out of one another. And Jake so obviously juiced out of his mind. on
Thank you
steroids,
for saying that.
Yep.
Thank you for fucking saying that. I was watching that fight. I was in TJ and I walked down the street and there's this big open food court in TJ. I don't know if you guys are, I'm sure Bill has crazy TJ stories. And there's this great food court and they were showing a fight. We walked in and I watched that fight and I was like, Jake Paul is so juiced. That fool's nipples are as long as my fingers.
I saw an interview with Nate Diaz and they were asking him, they mentioned the steroids thing. And Nate Diaz says, everybody I fight's on steroids. I'm not worried about it. And it was the most honest thing I've ever heard. Because I hate to tell you, Floyd used to juice. Guys from my gym, who I don't want to mention, used to juice because it's my gym. I used the one thing I used to do is James Toney used to make me spar with him, and he ended up being a heavyweight champ, and he lost the heavyweight championship. And the only amazing thing to us wasn't that he got caught juicing. What was amazing to us is that, okay, hopefully James isn't listening to this, but James is so cheap. He didn't get the good trainer to mask the steroids, because James never really liked to spend money on anything. You
can't really blame him, Bill. He spent 15 years at cruiserweight, and if you are boxing, you are not getting paid if you are fighting in cruiserweight. It just does not happen. Like, you show up, you unify all the belts, right? Because there's 4 sanctioning bodies plus a 5th that's trying to become a member of the Big 4, right? And you show up, you've unified all the belts. You're like, yeah, I just fucking whooped the shit out of this still champ. You go to the back and they hand you like $6 in cash, and they're like, you fight a cruiserweight. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares.
The big paydays was at heavyweight, and he still is the only one that's ever knocked out Evander Holyfield and the only one to ever knock out John Ruiz. And the worst part about James wasn't so much that he bulked up with the steroids, but he originally was fighting at 220 in the heavyweight fights. And then suddenly he's fighting at 250. And I always remember you could tell how slow he was. And Freddie, I was at the gym and Freddie goes, Bill, you could hit him now. And when I used to spar with him, I couldn't hit him. Like, he was like a ghost standing right in front of you. So,
well, dude,
but I tell you what, I could hit Jake Paul 100 times even at my age and being out of shape. That guy's bucket head right.
I don't know about you, Bill, but watching that fight, I figured Diaz would at least have good footwork, considering a lot of his game in a cage is predicated off throwing lots of jabs, moving away, circling away from the dominant hand, and then shooting for takedown, right? He just kind of walked forward the entire fight, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? He just stood there.
It's weird about MMA guys because, the first guy that used to come in the gym with Freddie was BJ Penn. And then George St. Pierre started coming in. And both of those guys would learn some boxing moves, but then all of them came in and they were most of them were terrible. They couldn't figure out how to punch. I give them credit for trying to up their game, but, because that's the other thing about UFC. People like the knockouts and the big blows in the UFC, and that's how you make the money. But that's the other thing is the Paul brothers. That was the saddest article when I saw that the other day, and Nate Diaz said he made more in the Paul fight than he made in his entire UFC career. That's really messed up.
That's and like going outside of like I guess like the Paul or the Paul brothers and them fighting, which is like it's like this is like live golfification along with the like the social media star kind of coming into it. And I mean that's like none of it like it's like honestly, it just feels like new versions. Like the more that I think about it, right? Because it's like I like Transformers as a kid, and there was like Transformer toy at the in the Happy Meal, Transformer T-shirt, right? So it's like a cartoon, but it transcends into all these other fucking things of your world, and like that's what kind of fucking sucks nowadays. Is like for kids, for teenagers, these YouTube stars are, their idols, and like, and they're pop culture idols or whatever. And
And
they buy into whatever the hell they do,
well,
whether it's selling shitty energy drinks or
Mm.
shitty burgers or boxing. I'm
I
sure
have
like there's people that like moms in the suburbs that are like, this is the first time I'm ever buying a pay-per-view fight, and they don't have no idea why.
Well, interestingly enough, I got a really great guy that's I know here in Athens, Georgia, and he's a like the guidance counselor at one of the local high schools named Montu, and he does really great things for the kids. But he was telling me it's like they don't want to go to college; they want to be influencers at this public school, and you can understand why, because you go to I mentioned that in the thread the other day. People go to college, they get a degree, they come out, even if they're like got a profession, they're lucky if they start off at $50,000. And these idiots are living in a mansion in Los Angeles,
Yep.
and they have, it's really, and I don't know what you do about that, but I mean, it's maybe if we did have communism, we would get rid of influence.
Get rid of influencers.
But in a weird way,
Yeah, Bill, let's go.
An influencer too,
Well, I want to ask you guys about something that I saw in the documentary thing I watched, which it was so funny. I didn't know this documentary existed. I was watching a documentary about another person that I believe we've talked about on this show before, Johnny Manziel. Has a Netflix Untold, and it apparently had like come out recently. And after that was over, it was pretty interesting. But once that was over, the Jake Paul thing said, "Oh, do you want to watch this?" Jake Paul. I was like, "Yep." And so I watched it, and what they were doing, and I was talking to Marcus about this earlier, which was something I find very interesting. And they're using the language of big tech, and that's the language of disruption.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, God.
Uber. We disrupted. We're going to be market disruptors. And so when Nate Diaz says, I got paid more with the Pauls than I ever got paid with UFC. And if you think about the fact that the Pauls have come out and really, and the documentary talks about this too, really gone after Dana White, who is an unscrupulous businessman who kind of revels in knowing that he is, the king of shit mountain,
Oh yeah, he loves the fact that he's king of shit mountain. I mean, the dude literally fucking open hand slapped his wife in the face, was videoed, and was just like, so what? It's my wife. Who gives a shit?
Get your own and beat on her too. I don't give a shit.
Like he does not care. And the thing is, between the Fertitta brothers and Endeavor, the two corporations, people in the corporation that bought UFC when Dana was still just like making matches, right? And have really just, they allowed him to act like, they never pulled back, on the leash. The Fertitta brothers were like, well, he used to box, kind of, sort of, so he knows the fight game. We'll just let him run it. And then Endeavor, it's a $1 billion fucking corporation, and they're just like, listen, dude, they're making money. Don't fuck with it. Just let it go. Right. And they've really enabled this behavior from Dana White, who, like you said, it probably was his personality when he was like nobody. But now that he's the head of the most powerful, one of the most powerful sports organizations on the planet, he's like fucking Dr. Evil.
Roger Goodell does not have in his office a wall full of maimed players on the wall. When I was on tour in 2009, tour managing a band, somebody knew somebody that was related to the guy that loaned Dana White the money to buy UFC. So we got to his house. We're in like his office, and on the wall, I don't know if he shows this on air. I don't know. I really don't know. But it's this massive wall of all these dudes with just the most beat-in faces I've ever seen. It looks like these people were beaten with a bat. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And like, oh, that's the people that lost. That's what they look like afterwards. And take a picture.
That's part of UFC is some of their most famous fights. Like the guy's nose is on the other side of his face.
Oh,
and it is funny that you mentioned, William Morris Endeavor, because as soon as you mention that, you're talking, the Emanuel brothers, who have a direct connection to Obama and the Democratic Party, and it's all about money with these guys, but they're. They bought that thing because they knew it would make money, and Ari Emanuel's another one. He's about making money, and maybe somebody needs to organize the UFC fighters like they're organizing Hollywood right now.
Well, that's the thing, Bill. They've tried that multiple times. Randy Couture actually led the movement back in like 2004 to try and organize UFC, and that's what chased him out of UFC for I think 4 years. And strangely enough, to circle it back to James fucking Toney, one of his first fights back in UFC.
That was one of the worst things.
Was against James Toney, right?
Yeah, and James needed the money, so he, again, it goes back to like,
Yeah, but I mean that's the thing, but the way the contracts are structured with UFC, you'll never see it organized. They're still considered, contractors. So. The only difference than like me working like a remote gig, doing transcribing shit, right? I'm a 1099 contract worker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have access through healthcare through the business I work for. UFC fighters do. And that's the only difference between the two. Dana in like 2013 was like, these fighters are getting bigger, stronger, faster. They're getting more fucked up every fight. And I'm paying them dog shit unless they're one of the big names. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up the performance center, expand it, open it up for essentially, if you're doing physical therapy, you can do it at the performance center. Excuse me. If you, for recovery days, like the hot tubs, the cold tubs, all that, you can do it at the performance center, right? That's why you see a lot of fighters fight out of Vegas.
That gym is
right
gorgeous.
There.
Hey, man, it was one of the most beautiful gyms I've ever seen.
Yeah,
everybody was so nice.
Which and it's like honestly, what he's doing is like it's not really that different than a company town, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Like, you keep them close, you provide them the services that they require, and then say find something better or fuck off.
If you're a young dude trying to get into fighting and you're in Vegas and you want to be like a UFC fighter and you go to that gym and you start walking around with like your UFC gear on, oh dude, I'm sure you feel like King Beef.
I guess I don't know. This is a good time to even like inject like my experience. I used to live with a dude that was on the Ultimate Fighter show. I'm not going to name names or like go into it or anything like that. Right?
Chicken shit.
This dude, but he used to be a linebacker at a not Ohio State football team, University in Ohio. Okay, so like
it was Akron, everybody. It was Akron.
Rowdy. But I mean, like basically all of those schools are, Akron, OU, fucking Bowling Green. Like none of those schools they're all the same, pretty much the same level. But I mean, he was like he was a decent linebacker, but ended up busting out up his knee, and UFC fighting kind of like was an opportunity for him to, be an athlete again, right? And like this dude could kick the shit out of somebody, you know what I'm saying? He was a street brawl, like we used to get in a lot of fights. He could kick the shit out of a lot of people, and then he started doing the UFC shit, and like the ramp up to the Ultimate Fighter show. Like I remember we would go to these fights, because the ramp up to UFC is, in my opinion, more brutal than what you see in pay-per-view, because you've got a lot of wannabes. And like the thing what like Jake Paul is doing with like, oh hey, you get these old ass fighters. It really wasn't fair that my buddy was getting in the ring with some of the people that he got in the ring with, right? Like there was a lot of tears from family members of like his opponents, right?
Mm.
It was, which at the time, I'll admit, I cheered.
Try, bitch.
I didn't cheer like the faces of the family members, but I remember he within seconds just smokes this dude, knocks him out, and he's doing the thing where he's like like making noises because he's that knocked the fuck out. His family's there like, oh my god, like starts crying, like, and we're all like, yeah, motherfucker, like. But and that's like so much of what it is it's a group of very dominant versus like wannabes, and then eventually hopefully you get some type of social media video over to one of Dana White's underlings, and and that's how it is, right? And like it is the knockout, it is the brutality, right? Like it was the fact that he could get his fist halfway through a guy's face, and that was it. And like he ended up like kind of going out pretty early in the fucking show, because like you got one fight and then you're done. It's like but like and like for him that was it.
It's because he went. It's because he went to Akron.
And he was done.
That's why.
After
he
that,
Akron,
he lost. He's out of the house. Never heard from again. And like a lot of guys that like went out of the UFC.
Do you still talk to this guy, Marcus?
No, I've just been years since I talked to him.
His one thing I noticed, like, was watching these interviews with Nate Diaz and some of these other guys that are fighting the Paul brothers, and they're all. I mean, Nate Diaz is only like 38, and he can barely put words together. I mean, he sounds like he's like an old fighter who's punch drunk. And most of them sound like that. And I have a feeling because they do the kicks and everything and they're wrestling around. I don't think boxing's a great thing to do for 20 years, but I've met boxers who've done it for 20 years and they don't sound like that.
I definitely want to play you guys something real quick. I found this clip and I was supposed to play it last night in the champagne room, but I hope you guys appreciate it. And then we can go to the phones. But this is something I know there's a few fathers on the show right now, and as a father, you never want to see this happen because you never want to get knocked out in front of your kids. So I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I have to show this to y'all. This also gets millions of views, by the way. These street beefs fights.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember Kimbo Slice.
Oh, dude. Wait, here it comes.
Over Georgette.
Do it for Georgette.
Here it goes. Watch this.
Oh, it's over.
Oh, Dad.
Was he?
No.
Oh my God.
Were his riots there?
On the fucking button. God damn.
You heard the whistle with that mother.
Yeah. God.
You gotta play we gotta end it with the riverboat. That was a brawl, you know what I'm saying? But actually, and Bill, I would be interested. This might be a whole other thing, but head injury, contact sports. I wouldn't say it's something I'm passionate about, you know what I'm saying? But like it's something that I do think about and consider, especially as a kid. Like I grew up playing football, like in like what is it, 5th grade? That's like when we were allowed to strap on helmets, and really in the era, because like they used to have this the clips shows, right? Jacked up. And I mean, I don't know. This actually does tie in well, right? Where they have the top. Where they have this jacked up thing, and they just have the absolute just some dude tearing Waterboy style, boom, just crushing people. You see in mouth guards flying and shit like that, and like that's 5 years off that dude's life, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't, it's like we really don't think about that. But I think like with boxing and all that type of stuff, I'm kind of like curious as to like like your take, because you think if like
Well, it's funny that you mentioned. You remember they used to sell Sports Illustrated subscriptions with a VHS tape that was nothing but people getting clobbered in the NFL.
I had that.
And but yeah,
along with your football phone.
Yeah, I mean, but yes, I don't think head injuries are a good thing, and I think there's a reason why in certain schools in LA they stopped being able to get kids because in the rich schools the moms didn't want their kids to play football.
Yeah.
Peninsula High School, they were down to like 27 kids.
Bill, just so you know, the high school I went to, the whole time I was there, never had a full football team.
What the fuck?
Yeah, we never had everybody played both.
Jesus Christ. Did
Bro,
you grow up in
Marcus.
America?
Bro, Jason, any school.
He
The high school.
He grew up in California. He didn't grow up in America.
Literally, the
Tommy Fornia. Too busy centrally planning things.
oh my gosh.
Quick question before we go to the phone lines. I want to ask you guys a quick question. It's still about fighting. So I watched too many of these videos to like break down in the champagne room with MT, and we don't really do fighting stuff. That's more my own personal thing that I like to watch. I do watch the slapping video because I think it's the stupidest thing ever because there's no skill to it. There's no, it's very dangerous. I think it's only legal in Eastern Europe.
Yeah. It's very
and Dana White's involved with it.
Dana White owns the primary slap fighting league.
Get the fuck out
Yeah,
of here.
right?
Slap fighting is millions of views.
Get
And
Have you seen the footage of the woman that got slapped so hard she did a front flip? And everybody started commenting on her, and because they said you could see the moment where she realized as she got hit that this wasn't the career that she wanted.
No.
And so the woman actually commented on the video because, again, I read the comments, and she goes, "I'm really glad you guys are getting this much joy at one of the worst moments of my life."
You signed up for it. Like, yeah, I don't even feel bad. That's just literally what you signed up for.
Seeing as you're mentioning slapping and that you watch them, Jason, I'm going to put a plug in. I don't know if you've ever seen any Guy Madden movies. He made the saddest music in the world. He's from Calgary. Brilliant filmmaker. But maybe his most brilliant movie is a short he did called Sissy Boy Slap Party. It's exactly what you think it is, and you cannot stop laughing. It is so funny. And
God, that sounds like a champagne room thing.
Yeah, it is definitely behind a paywall. Please don't cancel me conversation.
No, it's a legitimate. I mean, he plays at art galleries and stuff. Guy Madden's a great filmmaker, but that film, I watched it with a couple friends of mine, and we could not stop laughing.
I mean, I can't stop laughing watching the slap fighting shit because I'm like, this.
Dude, I mean, I don't know what's worse, Jason, the slap fighting one. Marcus, I know you've seen the clips of the ones where you have 4-on-4 MMA fighting, or the 4-on-4 with the armor and the medieval weapons.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. The swords are blunted, but yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to wear a fucking 90-pound set of armor and then just get clobbered about the head and shoulders with a blunted claymore. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Actually, what's funny is that so I would call Jason earlier today, And he's like, "Oh, hey, come on the show tonight." Starts talking to that. I run into Dick, who's like my, left flank co-host of mine, and we got to start talking about the same thing. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go on the show later, and we're talking about Jake Paul and all this type of stuff." And we start just riffing on like, where is this going? Where is this end state, right? And I think like we all know where it's like straight up blood sport, like whether it is going to be a 6-on-6 squad death match, right? Where it's like, oh hey, I'm taking the M4. Oh no, I want my AR. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you taking on the loadout? Oh, Team Killers is using these types of guns. It's like we are so quickly headed there, Hunger Games shit. But it's like we've been prepping for that the whole time, because it's like, as they're saying, oh well, Pride is too fucking dangerous. Whatever the hell UFC is doesn't seem to be really that different.
Yeah.
And especially too when you've got this asshole going into these Eastern Bloc, countries, Eastern European countries, and setting up these absolutely absurdities when it comes to fighting sports. And that's what, it's like, eventually it's like, yeah, it was like the gladiators and carnivals and shit like that, where it's like, yeah, we're a few years away from somebody fighting a fucking polar bear.
You haven't
and only one of them gets the seal meat.
You know what you guys haven't mentioned yet? MMA basketball.
What?
You think I'm
MMA
fucking with you?
basketball?
Yes. Imagine if you will.
Oh God, Stephon Marbury's already in this league, isn't it?
Imagine a bouncy mat, kind of like that jump ball.
Oh, like
thing.
the trampoline basketball thing.
Imagine kind of like that.
Okay.
And somebody taking a jump shot and just getting taken down. And,
there's no point.
I'm being totally serious.
There's gonna be so many bones sticking out of skin.
I hate to say, does this exist already, Jason?
Yeah, it's a thing.
Oh.
I didn't want to believe it was real because I thought it was a bit. I was like, this can't. I didn't think the 4-on-4 stuff that Mac was talking about was real. I saw that.
That's real. Yeah.
It looks like dodgeball. It looks like a killer dodgeball.
Yeah. People. Well, the funny thing is, you're mentioning, and I don't disagree with you, Marcus, but I think in some ways we've already been there before with the spectacle, and I'll tell you another one that happened at the wild card that was one of the funniest things. They shot like a portion of the first Jackass show at the gym, and I came in right after they had been there, and these guys are like, they had a tape that the producers had left. And they were watching it, and they were like, "Wow, Bill, check this out. Guy came in here from MTV, and they paid Nigel $1,000 to punch these guys over and over again."
Was that is it like Butterbean?
No, not.
Was that the one with Butterbean? Because I thought Jackass did like a thing with Butterbean as well, where they he fucking just punched him, and it was.
I'm trying to remember who all got punched, but this one of the trainers there beat the shit out of this guy for $1,000, and they were just like, they gave us $1,000, but Jackass guys made more money, but they're another bunch. They sound punch drunk when you hear them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that really pisses me off most about this. Like, I boxed for a long time, right? And not only did I box, I hit CTE trifecta of boxing, football, and rugby, all during my formative years into the military, right? So I have no idea how my brain isn't smooth like a marble at this point, but knock on wood, right? But it takes years of training to just be proficient. I'm not talking good. I'm talking proficient. And by proficient, I mean you're able to protect yourself in the ring the best you can. Right. As an amateur, I fought Kelly Pavlik. Right. We were both from Northeast Ohio. He's a Youngstown guy. A big deal was made about him because he was like the next great white hope in boxing.
Yeah.
Right. And he never left Youngstown, and it ruined his career by him never leaving because he became an alcoholic. I mean, he beat fucking Bernard Hopkins. And when I say beat him, it was not a close fight. And Bernard Hopkins was a light heavyweight champ at 48 years old. right? The guy lives, eats, drinks, sleeps boxing. It's all he's ever done, right? So I fight him as an amateur, and keep in mind, I'm 5'8", right?
Mhm.
Kelly Pavlik is 6'2", and I matched up against him in the second round of an amateur tournament. And, you know, amateur, you wear headgear, you know, you wear a thicker groin pad, you know, and I walked away from that fight with my whole forehead just swollen up, good 3 inches off, you know, just a giant fucking bruise because you just fired a jab after jab after jab down at my forehead, right? And I'm a short guy. I know I'm going to fight taller guys. So I took the Mickey Ward fucking school of boxing class where if I just survive the first round, I'll wear him out, get inside, and make it to where he just pisses blood for the rest, you know, the next week, you know. And he worked like I went all 5 rounds, dude. And I just looked like hammered dog shit, just hammered dog shit. And you know, I got in the back. You know, I have ice literally taped to my fucking forehead. You know, and I looked at my trainer and I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, this sucks. But I met him when he did his first. It was his second title defense, and he did it Stanball Stadium, Youngstown, Ohio. Right, he went home with the belts, and he's fighting Tori. And if you know anything about boxing, you're gonna get like, you know, you like I said, you got the 4 organizational belts. You know, WA, WBC, IBF, WBO. Those are the big 4, right? And you know, the WBO typically does a pretty good job of not being corrupt like the WBC, because the WBC, if you called him right now and you were like,
You
yo,
fight for a belt.
yeah. Jason's just like, hey man, I want to be in line for a title fight. Solomon would be like, 100K, get you ranked 3rd. You're good to go. You know, like it's like that with the WBC, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's the other problem with the promoters in boxing are.
Yeah,
They're in it for them. They're in it for themselves. That's
yeah,
for sure.
and that's the thing. What sucks. What I loved was watching the Errol Spence Crawford fight a couple weeks ago. Crawford just dominated Spence in a way I've never seen Spence get dominated. And he was the first unified welterweight champ in the history of the 4-belt era. Like that should tell you how shitty the promoters are. This is one of the this is the Rolls Royce of fucking weight classes, and it's never had a unified champ because fighters will align themselves with Top Rank and you know, or Golden Boy and De La Hoya. Then you got Aram, and you've got who's the asshole that runs PBC, Bill? Al Heyman, right?
Oh yeah,
and they never ever work with each other. They refuse to. And Heyman's the worst of all, right? Like they're all bad, but Heyman is like the worst.
Well, you know who Heyman's hooked up with is what's his face, Jay Prince.
Oh Jesus,
Yeah.
really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, so these assholes have they're keeping like these unification bouts from happening. I mean, dude, we haven't had a unified champ since Lennox Lewis.
Fuck.
In the heavyweight division.
Are the Pauls? And I know they don't fight heavyweight, even though they're pretty big dudes.
Dude, right now, Jake Paul would, if he was actually fighting like to legitimize himself as a boxer, he'd be a cruiserweight.
You think so?
He would, yeah. Oh, he walks around at 215. Cruiserweight's 200 to 219.
Yeah, they would be fighting at cruiserweight or super middleweight. They're
Yeah, and I kind of hope that he does that because, like I said, cruiserweights don't get paid shit, and this would be really funny to me.
Well, that going back to the whole thing, he has found a way to circumvent. You know, I mean, I'm not sticking up for them, but the one thing that they have done is circumvent the promoters, and
yeah,
you know, again, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but Manny Pacquiao, he was only getting like 25% of what he made because he signed a deal with Golden Boy that he couldn't get out of, and Bob Arum talked him into double signing, and they went back to Golden Boy, and Golden Boy said, fine, pay us 25% of his cut, and we won't do anything. And that was the deal that Arum had Manny do.
Jesus.
Because Arum didn't give 2 shits about Manny. And, you know, by the time they took everything out, Manny wasn't, fortunately he lives in the Philippines, so you don't need that much money. But The time he really needed money was because it cost him so much money to get his Senate seat. Because
Yeah.
that's even
That is
worse.
very
That's
expensive.
going back to the documentary you first started talking about, Jason. Filipino politics is even more corrupt than the Paul brothers and
Oh, yeah.
UFC.
Yeah. I actually, when I was in the Marine Corps, I actually did some operations with the Filipino Marine Corps, and coming in, we drove by Manny Pacquiao's gyms in like General Santos City. So that was kind of
Were they gorgeous, like gold handles and shit on the?
we didn't go inside. The outside didn't look like it had any gold. Which, like, General Santos City is like in the southern Philippines, which like obviously it's like a
Archipelago.
constellation of fucking islands or whatever. Yeah, so but it's like pretty poor and it's dangerous.
Yeah, I mean,
some areas down there.
Manny grew up dirt poor.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these fighters do, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you look at like our South American fighters. Just going back to Cesar Chavez, right? Excuse me, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. The one who actually knows how to fight and loved the sport, not his shithead son.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to tell you something about his shithead son, though. His shithead son, had he trained at all, was actually quite good.
Oh, dude, yeah, and that's the thing.
Julio Cesar Chavez was so angry because his son he had the name, he had the looks, he was actually really strong and decent fighter, and he just wouldn't. I think he trained less than James Toney did.
Well, I mean, the sad thing is, like, Jason, Chavez Jr. had a title fight, his first title fight, 14 fights into his career.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Based off his dad's name.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, he started out fighting at like junior middle, which is like 154. Really, really did well at 160. Right. But like Bill said, dude stops training and he balloons up to like 210.
You should have seen his dad was so furious all the time.
Right. So he starts making this horrible 50-pound weight cut for fights to get to the middleweight. Like he fucking vacated 2 belts because he couldn't make weight. He couldn't make weight at light heavy, which is 175. So like his last fight that was televised, his dad's not even just watching the fight. He's working his corner now. Right.
Jeez.
And Junior is just fucking getting batted around the ring, just getting batted around. He could barely move, like he's doing like little head movements. He's trying to get behind his shoulder. He can't do it. Right. He's just getting fucking pegged. And then the 8th or 9th round, like they go to the corner and fucking dad is just fucking lighting into this kid. Right. And they bring on the interpreter because they're speaking Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And like the play-by-play man was like, "What's he saying?" And the interpreter's like, "I'm not saying that."
Which
right?
Speaking of Julio Cesar Chavez, a guy that grew up around my neighborhood is do you remember Mutt Hagen?
Oh, yeah, faintly, man.
He was a champion briefly. I'm trying to remember who he beat, but he fought. They had the big fight for Julio Cesar Chavez because he was going to have I think it was his 100th fight.
Yeah.
And it was in the bull ring in Mexico City, which holds like 140,000. And during the press conference, they were asking him what do you think about him winning 100 fights? And he said, yeah, well, if I fought Mexican cab drivers, I could do that too. It did not go over well.
Yeah.
And Julio Cesar Chavez held him up in the last part of the fights. It was one of those where he was punishing him, and the 150,000 out in the fan base wanting to kill him. And afterwards, Mutt's like, yeah, whatever.
That's the best is someone who talks shit but also can get their ass whooped and be like, yeah, I had that coming, and just move on with their day.
You cashed a check.
Yeah, real adult about it. I appreciate that.
Sometimes you get your check cashed. Phone lines are open, everybody. 626-873-8658. 626-873-8658. We are awaiting your phone calls because we want to hear what you guys have to say. I see some people in the chat saying that the Paul brothers are exposing the corruption in boxing.
Oh,
If
we've
you
known
think the
about it
Paul
for
brothers are
decades.
exposing
We've known
that
about the
corruption in
corruption for
boxing, you're 7 years old.
decades, right? The fact of the matter is like I grew up and my mother was dead set on me boxing, right? She's like,
what a mom.
yeah, she's
Wow.
like, yeah, she's gonna let me play football and rugby and then sign the paperwork for me to join the military at 17. But boxing was the line in the sand, you know.
No
like,
son of mine's gonna be sitting around the house like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Mom, I'm 8. I don't
Yeah.
give a fuck what you are.
Yeah,
Now
right.
go get me some cigarettes from the store.
Take a $5 out of my purse. Remember, Paul Mall Reds.
No. Classy Dave.
Yeah. But you know, even then, like when you saw how, you know, like Bill was saying, Cesar Chavez fought a lot of nobodies early on in his career. And then he hit that great group of like Mexican and Central American, you know, bantamweights and lightweights that really kind of made lightweight boxing explode. You know, because the United States is all about the fucking heavyweight, right? Always about the heavyweight. You know, Sugar Ray Robinson in the 40s and 50s with his long career, you know, got people excited about middleweights. But you got to understand, in the 50s, you only had like 5 weight classes. So Sugar Ray was fighting anywhere from 155 to 175, depending on the contract. And then 3 months later, you know, he's cutting back down to 150, you know, 150 to fight. You know, so like when they expanded the weight classes, which I think is important, I really think we need to find something between light, heavy, and cruiser and heavyweight, rather than having 15 to 20 pound gaps, because it just opens the door for even more injury, right? The WBC has what they're calling the bridger weight, which is between cruiser and heavy, but it's the only sanctioning body that, you know, authorizes fights like that, right? But when you look at corruption, especially in late 90s, and Bill, you can back me up on this, when you saw guys like Riddick Bowe, like, yeah, I won 3 of the heavyweight titles, I'm vacating 2 of them because my sanctioning fees are going to be 30% of my, you know, of my winnings right off the bat, right? And then you got to pay your cut man in all your training expenses. So like this guy is literally the most exposed, you know, fighter on the planet, and he's really only walking away with 30% of, you know, the $500K he was supposed to get, right? And we saw that in the late 90s. And then when you saw kind of this like stratification of all the promoters, which it was never good to begin with, but at least, you know, fucking, oh my gosh, what's his name? Dude with the big hair, Don King. Like, yeah, at least King.
He's also from
cross.
Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, another Ohio's best, right? Really representing all of us fucking bang up job, you know? But, you know, at least he would work with Arum to put on good fights. But like in the early part of the 2000s, you saw these promoters, what they would do is they would kind of market a weight class so they can keep the champions under their banner, and that's who they fought, right? And they did the same thing with middleweight. When you know, super welterweight or junior middleweight, it's the same thing, but the verbiage is different based on whatever organizing body you're working for. You know, when that weight class got popular, promoters would do that. You know, like look at the Charlo brothers, you know, amazing fighters. Both start out 154. Both of them work for the same guy, promoted by the same guy. And they're trying to get fights, actively trying to get fights against the best at 154, 160, 168. And they can't get them because their promoter refuses to work with another promoter.
Well, yeah, there's always been a lot of that. I mean, that goes back to the mob if you didn't sign with them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of, but going back to Floyd Mayweather, the one thing I want to bring up is like Floyd never fought anybody that wasn't like three bouts past their prime. And one of the fights that made him was fighting Ricky Hatton. And Ricky Hatton was always blown up. He was never very good. And his fight that made him was Costa Tszyu. Go back and watch that fight. Costa Tszyu beats him for 8 rounds. and then doesn't get off his stool in round 9.
Yeah.
And Costa Zoo was like a really tough guy. And I guarantee you that's probably the biggest payday he got was sitting on that stool. And he never fought again. And
yeah, he did retire after that fight, didn't he?
He sure did.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. You had, and I think this is another thing that really pisses off like American boxing fans. A lot of our best fighters now are coming from Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
The old Soviet satellite countries are producing the vast majority of our headers, right? And a lot of our lighter fighters, believe it or not, they're coming out of Japan now. Like Inoue, who is a phenomenal fighter.
Is that dude that's just beating the shit out of everybody?
Oh God, it's so bad,
Ooh,
Jason.
I
Nobody
saw some highlights.
Nobody can keep up with his speed. The
Yeah.
power he has is
Yeah.
ridiculous, and just his footwork. Like he can slip any punch you throw at him. It's amazing, right?
You're talking about the little dude, the little Japanese dude.
Yeah, he fights at 126.
Yeah, he's a fucking monster.
Yeah, so like we're not when we decided to stop funding USA Boxing, right?
Yeah.
It torpedoed any kind of movement to train and develop boxers, kind of like at the national level. And I hate using that term because, you know, fucking national sports organizations are horribly corrupt in themselves and lead to abusive practices. I mean, just look at USA Gymnastics. You know, I don't need to say anything else, you know, but like we don't train boxers anymore. And you have places like Wild Card because you have Freddie Roach there who has trained like a billion fucking champs, right? And yes, that might be a bit of hyperbole, but might as well be a billion for as many people as he's trained and got them prepped to go win belts. You know, or you have like the Sad Sack gym that I fought in, where when we were done training, you know, we gave the trainer and owner the $25 for the week. And then we went and cleaned the bathrooms because he couldn't afford to pay for janitorial services, you know? So like, it's just, that's how boxing is now in this country.
Well, you know, Freddie took on I want to say it was 2004. Freddie coached the Olympic team and they did not help him out.
Oh, no. USA Boxing at that point
went all the way to the Olympics, but he signed on to train the national team and try and upgrade. I want to say might have been 2008. And, you know, everything. That's another thing. I mean, yeah, sports.
I mean, Jason, you have to look at it this way. The last real fighter USA Boxing produced was Andre Ward.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the 08 Olympics. And it's 2023 now.
Okay.
And Andre Ward is retired. So, like, that should tell you we don't make boxers anymore. You know,
well, and that's what it's like. I think, you know, like Jason kind of touched on it, where it's like things go through cycles. You know, the like activities, like, you know, bowling used to be a thing people did often, and
I still do not bowl, Marcus. Okay, like I still don't
at
bowl.
my bowling ball. Right
when was
there,
the bowling alley you go to? When was it built? But like the thing was like
1831, Marcus.
But you're more likely like
Daniel Plainview played on that and brained that creature.
People boxed like this.
So I'll tell you, it's like I've seen Ninja Warrior gyms, right? Like the last boxing gym that I saw was next to 2 closed down manufacturing plants on the outskirts of Portland, Maine. And this gym used to be some old like thing because it had a smokestack going like 30 feet up in the air. So it's kind of converted from something else. But like, yeah, you'll see trampoline and fucking Ninja Warrior gyms more than you'll see any type of like boxing gym. And like, this is where, you know, like there's just, you know, different cultural tendencies that are like probably explain it over time. But at the end of the day, like that corruption and like, well, that violence is entertaining. It's like what he hit on is like helicopter moms don't want to sign up their shit where their kids aren't going to be able to show up for picture day.
No, but like we have to remember what boxing was and what it became. And there's a person in the chat that's, wants to believe that UFC is this dominant sport and everybody watches UFC, and it's not as watched as people would like to believe it is. I actually had to look up the numbers myself. They have more events than boxing. They have stuff pretty much like every weekend. But when it comes to like the biggest events that they have, they are dwarfed in comparison to fights that have happened. And they are dwarfed in comparison to Mayweather McGregor, which was an exhibition fight. So I think we have to kind of think about sports in terms of eras. Like when we think about the 50s and 60s, even 40s, and you think about all these black fighters that were fighting in various weight classes, especially heavyweights, those guys later became football players and basketball players. It was a safer sport. They ended up paying more money, and you had a longer lifespan.
But now they're becoming influencers.
Now they're becoming fitness influencers. Yeah.
Hey, Bill, perfect segue. Okay, Kai Cenat inviting people to get some free shit in New York, and now they're arresting him. They're trying to lock him up. It's free speech. Stop the steal.
When Jason brought this show up, I said, it's like, if you think about it, this is a guy, and I Jason knows this because MC and Toussaint and I, we're addicted to weird hip hop YouTube shows. And
yes, you are.
It's not weird. It's not weird. It's a very normal thing to like.
Marcus is over there like, I'm seen. I'm seen.
I'm proud of that. But I'd never heard of this kid, and he shut down the city of New York.
Yep.
Like, this is like, we have a whole defense department that tells us, like, we have to do this or somebody will shut down New York. It's like, well, a guy giving away PlayStations can shut down $100 billion to do, like.
Yeah, it's like it's that thing too. It's like, how dumb does dead Osama bin Laden feel right now? You know what I'm saying? It's like, I got these motherfuckers trading on flights. One of them runs off to fucking Vegas because he fell in love with a stripper. You know what I'm saying? You got to organize all this shit.
Can you imagine? Oh God, I was gonna make a horrible joke, but I won't.
Osama could have just been handing out PS3s, man.
Hey, come on down. It would have been like a PS1, right? But either way.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Yeah, well, no, it would have been PS2. It would have been PS2.
Yeah. It would have been PS2. Yeah.
Look, if anybody has something to say in the chat, please don't say it in the chat. You can call in. The number's on the screen.
Yeah.
Has anybody called in yet? Where are they?
A show about boxing that everybody has an opinion on, and the fact that you're not calling in either means one of two things: the prepaid is out of minutes, or
chicken shit.
Yep.
Ooh, damn.
Now we're gonna get a bunch of phone calls like this.
We coming for you, nigga.
The sad thing is, after the Leavenworth documentary came out, I had people like saying they'd come down, to North Carolina to get me, and I'm like, dude, just come. Like, stop talking about it. Yeah. Fucking get on the bus, get in your car, do whatever you got to do there. Fucking, cracker jihadist, like, and just come on down.
What documentary was this?
This is my new
Leavenworth, Bill. I served with a war criminal and was very open and outspoken in my critique of him. And Trump ended up pardoning him, but like it opened up this whole thing of and really exposed me to that right-wing populism bullshit that we're all dealing with now. But like, I mean, people threatened to kill me for fucking years, and then one actually came down. Easily pushing 450, easily looked like just a garbage bag full of chewed up bubble gum, like. And he had this plate carrier on that he couldn't even get bow straps connected, right? And he's there with his buddy. Like, my roommate at the time had cameras all over the outside, so like he gets an alert on his phone. And he's like, Mac, and I'm downstairs, and I'm like, why the fuck are you yelling? And he's like, dude, come up here. So I run up there, and he's on the camera. You hear, we're gonna get him out of here. Right? So I put I'm ready to go just in case the thing happens, right? So like I get my shit on and I walk out the back door, and like I just stood there, and they're like leaned up on the door. He's like, I'm gonna turn the doorknob, you're gonna go in. It's like, dude, the front door's locked. Like, you big dumb son of a bitch, you know. And all I was like, I just say, like, yo, man, just put him on the ground and lay on your stomach. And, right. And they were just like, oh, you know, like,
Oh my god.
you know. And so dude, Marcus, these rifles easily $2,000-$3,000.
Of course.
Just
Of course.
just Gucci'd out, right? I've got one that's probably better that I built for like $400, you know. And I just stood there and I call up the Hope County sheriff, and I'm like, yo, and then like I had already turned over like all the screenshots, all the voicemails, all this shit, right? And I'm like, hey, I got one. And he's like, you got one what? I'm like, one of those assholes actually came out here. And the sheriff was like, are you fucking kidding me? And I was like, no, man. So like the sheriff and like 2 other squad cars come out. And you just see these 2 fat assholes just right. And the one dude looks at me, he's like, can I roll over? It's hard to breathe. And I'm like, yo, man, the sheriff's here. Like, I'm not in charge of you anymore, dude. Like, they're in charge. And the sheriff's is like, roll your fat ass over so you don't suffocate yourself with your titties. Right. And so he's sitting there. He's like, Mac, you all right, man? I'm like, I'm fine, dude. I was like, this ain't my house. And I don't think Tom would like if I shot one of these fat fucks and they exploded all over the door, you know, like. I was like, I'm not doing that, man. So I just figured I'd give them the warning, and they put their shit down, and I wait for you. And the sheriff's like, well, I appreciate that, man, because I wasn't in the mood to do any paperwork about you shooting people, you know. And then I got curious, man, because they had this like big fucking like Silverado 1500, like pretty new, you know. Drove all the way from Mississippi.
Damn.
Just to come fuck with
hell
me.
yeah.
Damn. We got some phone calls. We got some phone calls.
Right,
See, this is what happens when we fuck around and tease people on air. Now we're gonna get yelled at. I'm gonna get doxxed and
Mac, I know where you live.
Yeah.
Oh, you and everybody else, dude.
The whole time. All right, caller from a 929 area code. What is your name and where are you calling from?
What's up, Jason? Marcus. This is Virtuoso from New York.
Oh shit.
Uh-oh.
Hey, what's going on?
Yo.
Hey. So yeah, man. I really enjoyed the topic you guys discussion. I've been discussing because I've been a boxing fan for I would say at least almost 30 years. But I've seen the sport like gone downhill in terms of fanfare, you know, and excitement, based on the realities of the political economy of boxing, how it is. And when I see influencers kind of infiltrating the sport of boxing, at first it kind of looked like they're, are kind of a nuisance. You know, at first, seeing these guys that are unskilled, trying to do what was really a specialized fist fighting. It's like something they do that it takes years to craft. But I see that the positive, the upside of it is their ability to use their audience that they garnered, as the social media presence, to convert them as boxing fans. But the thing is, as a purist, I see the guys that are struggling to at least, getting a following, go through the motions of collecting fans, getting fans, because the reality is like you're not seeing them become household names because the inactivity. Again, it comes down to economics. You don't see that many networks that invested in boxing. Just a few platforms like The Zone, ESPN, Showtime. It used to be a terrestrial product. That's why when you see guys come from the Olympics already have like ready-made fans, it's because the networks put them, gave them a platform, and they had a lot of viewership numbers.
Yeah.
But because the way television viewing habits have changed, you see a divided audience. So I kind of like what they're doing, the Paul brothers, but it's important that at least they try to do business with promoters so that they can use their fighters, to give them use that platform to get to introduce these people, these newly converted fans to watch, actually real fighters.
Let me ask.
Like
I'm sorry.
they have. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you
go
this.
ahead.
Let me ask you this. And I was thinking about this very thing when putting this show together and writing the script out for the day. There is something interesting because I felt the same way. I watched about 4 months ago. I watched no bullshit about 5 hours of Jake Paul content. I was in awe of how much Jake Paul content was in existence, of people making videos about how much they hated him, and about people making videos about how great of a fighter he was. There's all this content about him, and there wasn't much content about boxing in general. Now there's boxing shows, but there's Jake Paul content, right? Kind of like in the world that I exist in, there's political content like we do on this show, and then there's the world of drama. If this show was called Anna Kasparian is a dipshit, everybody would tune in to tell me to fuck off or hell yeah, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Wait, are we doing that show?
No.
No.
We'll do a show called Anna Kasparian is someone I know, and I'll just leave it at that. And that's all it's going to be called. But I say
you
that
didn't trademark that. I'm taking
I say that because the Pauls have done this thing much like Trump did for the world of politics. It's all about them, and nothing else really matters unless it's adjacent or is some sort of spawn of them. And my fear is that there are people like you're describing that have to come up real hard. They didn't have a gajillion dollars and trainers and a breathing expert to work with, and top of the line. They don't just have trainers they're working with, right? I mean, you're in a sweaty gym. They have these top of the line guys that are doing mobility movements so they don't stay injured long, and it's insane to watch the level of training that these cats had, and to think that the people want to see more influencer type fights. Like their fights were it was Nate Robinson, the basketball player, who was he had retired for a few years, and another influencer brothers fought them. Then they started fighting actual fighters. The boxing thing didn't work out. I look at them as, when I say disruptors, kind of like what you saw Jeff Bezos do with the early days of Amazon. Let me come into an industry that's a little down right now with books, but books are a thing. People always still want to buy books, even though they're not what they used to be.
Well, take this step further. Mark Zuckerberg's serious about he wants to fight Elon Musk. He's got those pictures with his shirt off. He's training wants to fight Musk.
And what would be the biggest fight? What would be the biggest fight that we've ever seen in our lives? Pay-per-view wise.
They will be the number one in pay-per-view
in history.
Okay, first off, I'm gonna stop everybody right now. No state board is gonna let this happen, because Elon Musk, there's no fucking way he doesn't get winded just leaving his Tesla and walking in the front door at X.
I say.
Okay. And two, Mark Zuckerberg is a robot. That is not a human being, right? And you cannot have robot human fights yet. We can't have that happen yet.
No. Send them to fucking Epstein Island. They're not using it, and have the fucking fight.
But these are 2 of the 10 richest men in the world, and Zuckerberg is serious. And that says something. I don't know what it says.
I'd say
the spectacle that we want to see.
Can I just say real quick that
please?
I just want to say real quick. I was actually in the presence of Mark Zuckerberg. I worked as a custodial worker, freelance, at the New York Times building, and he was doing an interview. And I swear to God, I was standing next to him in the bathroom, and I was like, this guy hasn't blinked at me fucking once.
This motherfucker's not.
And I couldn't even dare to look at him.
Oh yeah, they won't. They don't.
Why you still have a soul? You didn't look at him.
By the way, I hope that if that fight actually takes place, I hope that's a unification bout. We're gonna get to own both X or Twitter, whatever the fuck it's called now, and Facebook and Meta, whatever. the
Oh,
fuck.
dude, yes. Put your
So,
companies up.
yeah,
Yo, Virtuoso,
unify it
that
all.
is perfect.
slips.
That is
Virtuoso,
perfect.
thank you so much for the phone call, brother. I always appreciate you. You got one more thing to say?
No problem, man.
Hey, I appreciate
Yeah,
you.
I just want to say real quick.
Mhm.
Let me just point out real quick that this year, I think the real fighters that they've actually taken care of the sport. They actually was like 2 big fights that happened, that are actually saving boxing, and coincidentally they all happened in the PBC. Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis, and then Terrence Crawford versus
Yeah, Spence.
versus Errol Spence, but you notice that there was a difference in pay-per-view buys, but it had me wondering that the difference was the selling point is always going to be controversy, because I feel like Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis are polarizing in their own unique ways, whereas Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence are just down-to-earth guys from the Midwest. And so, that's usually what it takes to sell the pay-per-view events a bit more. It's controversy.
Oh, hey, thank you so much for the call, Virtuoso. That was a great call. And
if
you
there's
get
some,
this.
Here it comes!
God.
That was a great ending because that's so true. How do you guys feel about that before we go to the next call? How do you guys feel about the fact that hip hop is the same way? I don't know anybody single, but I know who they shot. You know what I mean? And boxing is UFC is just pro wrestling that you don't know the outcome. And that's what Dana White wants. That's literally his business model.
And I mean,
Virtuoso hit it out of the park with what he said. Controversy sells. Like, look at one of the most popular fighters, late 90s, Prince Nassim Hamed.
Oh, yes.
Used to do the flip into the ring.
Yes.
Right? Always just towing the line into being the most unprofessional fighter because he always barely made weight, ran his mouth all the time. Those last 2 fights where he got shellacked, he got exposed for being a very overrated fighter. But he knew how to promote himself. He knew how to get fans excited. He talked a lot of shit about like the Christian, the non-Muslim fighters that he would fight, saying like, and he's English. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to go in that ring and I'm going to just knock him out, make him look real bad in front of Jesus and everybody, and like that. And everybody would be so mad, dude. Everybody so mad, and they hate watched him, just hoping he would fucking lose.
That's what UFC is to me. It's a lot of hate watching. Like people like, I can't wait to see so and so get the shit kicked out of him. When I was a little kid, Bill, and I don't know how you feel about this, Bill, we got to watch the 4 Kings because of our age. Was it Iran Barkley, the uncle of Saquon Barkley, Camacho, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearns. These are some great fights that happened in the 80s that we got to watch. And it wasn't about, I can't wait to see this motherfucker get knocked out. It was kind of like, we're going to watch Sugar Ray Leonard. We're going to watch a great fight. Do people want to watch great fights?
No. Oh, not. Oh, everybody on this call.
I think there's always going to be.
Just the people on the call here.
Watch a great fight.
I think there's still people who want to watch great boxing, but there's always been a bit of the casual fans. I mean, Mike Tyson brought out the casual fans, and they mostly wanted to see him take somebody out in 2 rounds. And Mike was never a great boxer. He's a force of nature. But once they figured out that if you hold on for 3 rounds, he doesn't have anything, because that's another one. I talked to Freddie about, Freddie had Mike for about, 5 or 6 fights. And I was talking to Freddie one time, and he goes, I can't break him of all his old bad habits. And he's never, and that's once, and plus he got older, so he wasn't as ferocious at the beginning. But once those guys figured out, if I hold on for 3 rounds, I can knock him out in the 6th. He just couldn't fight anybody, The funniest thing is Freddie said that he got that face tattoo to try and get out of the fight.
Yeah, I mean,
we have another call, guys.
Well, I would say real quick on the last
Yeah.
thing. The only thing I would say just to look out for though is that like look at actually like what they're doing is because you could say Jake Paul is bringing popularity to energy drinks. You could say he's bringing popularity to any of the bullshit gimmicks that like oh is Mr. Beast bringing popularity to burgers? You know what I'm saying? Like so I'd say it's like be weary, right? It could be good. There could be a group of people who actually get involved in boxing because Jake Paul, which like that's what I'd say. Really, it's like I think we've touched on it a few times. It's the youth, right? What are the mechanisms for people to enter into the sport? And that will tell you what the professional aspect is like a lot more. And there just used to be a more structured and accepted avenue into boxing that develops a
There
professional
were gyms.
viewership
There were
of it.
gyms in the inner city. You could
Oh,
go
yeah.
to a boxing gym back in the day. It's like
Yeah.
you were a bad kid. Somebody took you to the gym. That was like punishment. Oh, you want to
Yeah.
fight in class? All right, we're
Yeah.
gonna take you to the gym.
And so
I got my ass kicked, went too many times on the playground, and was like, fuck this. I need to go back.
That was your mom kicking your
but
ass.
that's where
I brought back the wrong pack of smokes, dude. I didn't know what to do. They didn't have what you wanted.
it's really only gonna I think make a difference is if these kids and these teenagers that are following Jake Paul actually convince their parents, these rich ass fucking parents, to own a boxing gym. Oh, hey, little Johnny's into boxing. Start a boxing gym with your fucking rich ass yacht money. That's really what will develop the sport is investment. That's how you develop really anything, But we can get to that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the fantasy fight I want is a 3 people, Zuck, Elon, and give me Bezos as well.
Well, look at Bezos. He looks like one. This is. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, these are the richest people in the world. They're supposed to be happy, right? You have Jeff Bezos has done enough steroids that he looks like that bendy toy you had when you were a kid, right? And he divorces his wife so that he can get with the Channel 11 weather woman from like 15 years
Okay,
ago.
whom amongst us hasn't done that? All right, whom amongst us?
What's that? But this is a man. This man doesn't scream happy. This screams like this is like I have enough money to really blow it out with my midlife.
They're
crisis.
all
Yeah,
all
don't you tempt
obviously
me with
the
a good
most
time, Bill Cody.
insecure. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
they're all
What's that?
obviously the most insecure men. Like it's obvious.
Let's
Yeah.
bring in a caller real quick. Caller from the 818. What is your name and where are you calling from?
David, this is David Feldman.
This is David Feldman.
I'm
We
messing with you,
we
Jason.
can't have any David Feldman jokes for a plethora of reasons that I will never get into on air, but let's just not do that.
You know what? But the thing is, though, Jason, is I just to make it brief on this subject real quick, I saw the passionate defense that you put up for combat sports, and I appreciated that. I just want to say that.
Hey, thank you.
But
you.
yeah, I mean, it's because for myself, I grew up around combat sports, from as long as I've known. I remember watching as a kid. I watched Tyson Holyfield 1 and 2. So it was, so I've been around boxing forever. I wrestled growing up. So it's, combat sports is kind of like ingrained in me. So when I hear stuff, that is coming from a place of ignorance, I like to hear, a passionate response to it because, you don't get that a lot. But anyhow, on the topic at hand, the way I see the Paul brothers and what they're doing for combat sports, it's like the old tough man, but with people with a bigger audience. So instead of the lumberjack and the truck driver, just going at it, on FX, you got, these social media influencers with millions of followers. And, that's just, bringing more eyes to the sport. It's good and bad. I can't say, it's much more exploitative than what the UFC does to their fighters as far as pay goes. But what they are doing is it's smart, because Jake Paul, he hedges his bets when he's picking his opponents. They're these guys that are on the downswing. They're MMA fighters, and with these MMA fighters, they have fans of their own, but they don't understand that the nuance of boxing, that striking skill is completely different with 4-ounce gloves and a cage and the threat of being taken down to and being submitted. Those things are not taken in consideration to the uneducated eye. And what kills me is the fact that we had 2 undefeated champions in Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford, having, a masterful performance by Terrence Crawford. It was, for me at least, I've been a Terrence Crawford fan for a very long time, and the whole Errol Spence fight, it was, Pacquiao Mayweather level in my estimation. The only problem is that Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence can't cut a promo if their life depended on it. They don't have the mic skills. They don't have they don't bring that entertainment value and that pop that everybody's expecting, because the spectacle that people appreciate more, the spectacle around Jake Paul and Nate Diaz fight was there without the substance. It was almost like comparing, I compare it to eating like a great ribeye steak and a bologna steak at the end of the day, with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence being, the prime ribeye steak, and that Jake Paul Nate Diaz fight being, bologna steak. It was embarrassing to watch, that type of fight garner so much attention when you have great fighters. And what I believe is the fact that when you had Top Rank divorcing itself from HBO Sports, when you had that, go away, and that, long history of established, eyes on, HBO boxing, which was a mainstay in boxing forever, go into kind of just oblivion. I think Top Rank ended up on ESPN. I couldn't really tell you. And then you had, I think it was PBC come about, and then DAZN. You're taking away the mass accessibility of boxing from the people, where it was easily accessible. And then also, even going further back, you look at like when they used to have fights on, back in the day, Wide World of Sports, and it was just there in the public eye. So when you take away the eyes from the sport, then it diminishes its appeal and its luster, because it kind of just goes away, and then you don't know who the stars are. And for me as a boxing fan, I have my favorites. I watch Inoue, I watch Crawford, I watch Tank Davis, I watch Wilder, and these are the guys that I could think of off the top of my head. But before, it was like there was plenty of fighters that you could name off their opponents and whatnot, and it just the viewership isn't there, and that's where the UFC capitalizes on. The UFC capitalizes on the fact that they have they're on ESPN Plus, easily accessible. ESPN, they're on broadcast, network television as well. And throughout the pandemic, when all sports got shut down, the UFC was the only player in the game, because they didn't give a fuck about any of the COVID restrictions or anything like that. They created something even called Fight Island. They went to Abu Dhabi and still maintained their programs, and they were the only player in the game. So when you have mass appeal and mass, and the masses looking at you as the only sport in town, that also goes onto the betting side. And UFC is a huge it's a huge betting revenue driver. So back to Paul and Jake Paul and what he's doing. I for one can tell you this, that Jake Paul is not a boxer. He boxes, but he's not a boxer in the sense that he's not going after titles. He's going after paydays, and that's smart of him. But the thing is if you're looking for boxing and you're looking for what is going to drive boxing, it's going to be you're gonna have to try to find it. It's almost like when you would go to Blockbuster and you're trying to find that that movie that that that's not that you have to look for. You have to find. You have to seek it out. And that's the thing about boxing is that if it's been with you and it's something that's been a part of you for a while, then you're gonna have to seek it out, which is exciting in a sense. But the thing is like when people start talking like ignorant, like they're talking about how Jake Paul's like this great boxer. I'm like, nah, you don't really know what you're talking about, because if you look at him fighting Tommy Fury, I mean that was a split decision, and Tommy Fury's not even that great of a boxer, and these guys, and they're on par with one another, and it's just that Jake Paul's just hedging his bets, which is good for business, but it's not necessarily good for boxing in my estimation.
Yeah, but I mean Tommy Fury is he's the brother of Tyson Fury, the pound for pound best heavyweight on the fucking planet. But Tommy got his start on a reality show, right? Like boxing was just something he knew he could ride his brother's coattails
His father
into. Make a couple bucks. So like Tommy Fury, the fact that he handled Paul, I mean, and he did.
He handled the shit out of him. Yeah, he got knocked down, but it was more of a slip than it was a knockdown, in my opinion.
Yeah. But, if that is what we have to look forward to, and I think Paul only did it to, kind of dip his toe into, maybe if I fight a boxer, we'll see how this goes. And he got his fucking world rocked. I don't think we see him really fight another boxer again.
You saw the drama. You saw the drama between the Rahman's son, Hasim Rahman's son, and all that drama behind weight cutting and this and that. And I think you bring up some amazing points, and thank you so much for the call. That the Paul spectacle makes for interesting television, but in the world of combat sports, of people that take it seriously and really actually enjoy the art of fighting, you're not going to get that with them, and they're an undercard, in my opinion, at best.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Askren fight, right? Ben Askren has 2 loofahs attached to his wrist. There's a reason Dana White passed on him when he was coming from one FC, right? Like he was a dominant champion one, but he was a wrestler and a wrestler only. He'd get you on the ground, kind of roll around on you. He went on points, right? So when he's getting ready to hit when he gets ready to hit free agency, Dana passed on him the first time. Excuse me, he went from Bellator to one. And then that last time, Dana White's like, oh man, all the fans want to see him. And then he just gets his shit pushed in UFC. And then he signs this deal to fight a Paul. And I'm like, bruh. And then he gets knocked out like the 3rd round. I'm like, you little bitch. I was like, you.
I mean, the Tyron Woodley knockout was so sad. I was actually sad.
But that,
yeah.
Tyron Woodley has been on the downside of his career for a while there.
Oh yeah, I mean, dude, he was like 1-5 when he took that. In his last 6 fights when he took the first.
Hey, caller, thank you so much for calling. We have to take this last call.
Not a problem. Just one more thing before you let me go. Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
In the YouTube chat, OG Swag doesn't know what he's talking about. If you really look at it and you really dissect what the UFC is doing, is that if you're the only player in the game, yeah, you're going to look really good on paper, and that's all I want to say.
All right, we got shit talk in the chat.
That's fine.
There's one thing I want to, Bill, before you make your point, I want to say this one thing. I want to say this one thing before you make your point, Bill. I have been dying to have a moment where callers beef with each other like Jim Rome. So if we could have callers beef, not like serious beef, like all fun games, just good talk. I don't want to go to a live show and have motherfuckers be there, like
we coming for you.
And like, no, this is the VIP meet and greet. Just
names and addresses
and hellos. Yeah. But the shit talk on I'm all for shit talk, especially in the champagne room, because that's all you guys do with me. You guys shit on me for literally an hour yesterday in my shorts. But Bill.
I didn't hear that.
Good.
But, I did notice there were some comments about your wham. As you know, I am also a George.
Because you're a good man. That's why.
You, so, No, I thought one of the things the caller brought up, and this, the stuff with HBO recently is another step away. But boxing was at its most popular when it was on television, when you had Friday night fights, and back in the day in the '80s. Like, one of the reasons we knew about Tommy Hearns and Marvin Hagler and those guys is because they were on a number of free fights that were decent before they had the pay-per-views. And now everything's on pay-per-view or it's on HBO, so it just changes the dynamic. And I think one of the smart things that Dana White did was the Ultimate Fighter series, because people saw these, they got used to seeing them, and then they wanted to pay to see them, fight in the pay-per-views. So, the Paul brothers, they don't fight fighters. It's true. And I don't know that they're going to bring boxing back. But again, one of the things the caller mentioned, these guys are one of the reasons these guys are taking these fights with the Paul brothers is because they've never made this kind of money. And I think that's another question that some of these promoters have to ask themselves. How do you raise up fighters if you're not paying them?
We got a great chat comment that Street Beefs is better than UFC. Now, I don't think the fighting in Street Beefs is better than UFC, but do I watch Street Beefs for a way too much of a time while I'm uploading stuff to the internet? Yes, I do. And it's sadly, you know what Street Beefs is, in my opinion, and I'd love to know what you guys feel about this. It is what that real shitty guy did with bum fights, and actually trying to quote unquote legitimize it with the appearance of a referee. And I don't know why they have him fight on dirt. Like, that's just dangerous. Like, you want somebody blowing out a fucking knee, fighting on loose gravel. Like, that doesn't seem real smart there, fellas. But in general, people want to see regular people get into fights, and they have a massive following. And originally, the guys that originally started it used to go into communities like hoods and teach little kids how to box. They would literally record themselves going up and down the street, and they would say, hey, at this time, we're going to be over here at this park, and we got gloves and pads for the kids. We're just going to teach them how to box. Boys and girls, we don't care. I don't mind that. You're getting out into the community and you're doing shit. We talk about this socialist shit all the time. There's somebody watching this right now has got a little bit of free time. You could start a little socialist boxing league, even if it's just training little kids. That's huge.
It goes back to what we were talking about last week. Sports is a great organizing tool that a lot of people on the left are like, sports ball? Absolutely not. We've got better things to do. Nah, dude. Like, how, like, especially when you talk about doing things in the community, right? Go do something in the community. Like, it doesn't have to be boxing. If boxing's not your thing, think it's too violent, cool. What sport's wildly popular and is the fastest growing in America? And it's cheap to start one. Soccer.
Which, hey, two things, right? Well, look, caller, it's kind of like going even back to like the eyes on. I question whether Jake Paul is bringing eyes to boxing, or that the eyes that were on Jake Paul are just following him to boxing. Because that's the thing too. Is like, if he's not a good boxer, if he's not putting good fights, then those eyes that are watching aren't there for the sport of boxing. They're just there for the spectacle. And like, I'd say that there's a very limited amount of people who are going to take watching Jake Paul do his song and dance, and like, yeah, bringing out all these old fucking boxers who didn't get the payouts that they should have gotten for their fucking 20 years, or like, whatever, UFC fighters that, and bringing them into boxing, 10 years after their prime. None of this, I don't think any of this really, this is like,
you don't think it has sustainability is what you're
saying. Is lingerie football good for the NFL? It's like, this is just something for fucking people to watch, but it's like, it's not real. You know what I'm saying? This is not real.
Well,
got somebody-
Marcus, do you have an answer
Virtuoso
for
wants
us?
to
Is
wrap
it
it up.
good? Is it good for the NFL?
Virtuoso says, "I got a Rumble notification for a slap league. Can y'all wrap this up?" Okay, we got shit talk right now. Okay, we got some shit talk. Hold on. Caller from the 920. What is your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Logan Barrow from the chat, and I'm just here to say that everybody that's talking about Jake Paul and how he's like helpful for boxing, they're all full of shit, man. Like, there's no way that this gimmick, like where he's just coming on and literally boxing people that don't have any like boxing experience is good for boxing. It'd be like having a soccer team play in the NFL. It just doesn't make sense.
I didn't want
I
to
was
say it
not
that
expecting
mean.
that analogy.
I didn't want to say it that mean, but
I did not see that analogy coming. That kind of fucked me up.
Yeah,
right
that's pretty
there.
much all I had to say.
Well,
I'm not really that big of a boxing fan.
Uh-huh.
Floyd Mayweather's style really bored me.
Mm-hmm.
He was just really a defensive fighter, and I'm in it for the knockouts. Like, I don't really pay attention to like who's who in the boxing world, but I'll tune in for a good knockout.
Well,
But you know, like that's pretty much my take.
well, thank you
Like,
very much.
I've seen like
Well, that
what
goes
that's
back.
done to the
I
WWE,
agree that
like with them bringing in like Snoop Dogg and all that. Like, nobody really cares about those spots. Like, sure, they'll get a big crowd pop at the time, but like, there's really nothing to it.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you, and thank you so much.
I mean, can you imagine Messi trying to like slide
Yeah,
tackle
have a good
Derrick
night, y'all.
Henry? I want to see that.
You want to see Messi slide tackle
Derrick Henry?
Yeah, it's funny he brought up the WWE because I've been looking at these Jake Paul fights. In my feed today, I had a 1976 bout starring Greg Valentine and Ric Flair fighting for a title in like 1977. And the other day I saw that Ric Flair was on one of these Joe Rogan light podcasts that T.O. Bell or whatever his name is. And I'm like, Ric Flair's like, he did that for 50 years and was still a star. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just like
I would.
I'm always happy with a Ric Flair mention. So don't.
Ric Flair.
That's right.
And then and I saw this interview with Greg the Hammer Valentine at home, and his house is immaculate. It's gorgeous, and so he must have made some money. Probably
He maybe
more
didn't
than,
shove it up his
no,
nose.
he has
I
made-
watched before we went on air. I was watching the Marty Jannetty Dark Side of the Ring as the season finale. If you guys want to see a pretty good show about boxing that really gets you some good kind of behind the velvet rope interviews, there's a show called Dark Side of the Ring, which actually talks about a lot of guys that passed away. And Marty Jannetty's still alive, but because of a nasty injury he got while he was wrestling, they showed his foot. It was just disgusting looking. And you talk about a dude that just shoveled so much, dope into his body over the years. And most of the stories are like that. These guys made some decent money, shoveled a lot of it into their nose or in their arm, and they were, not the nicest guys behind closed doors. Quite a few murderers in the WWF. More than murders in the WWF. It's
wow.
Anytime you deal in these kind of sports where you're getting like bags of cash at the end of the night, and the festival world, as Bill knows, taking credit cards is still a relatively new thing. I used to hear people in 2018 complain about I miss the days you could take a bag of cash home at the end of the night. So, imagine what boxing and any kind of wrestling, imagine what all these things were like when these guys were just getting massive bags of cash at the end of a night in a sold out arena. Oof.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, when you're talking about like even professional wrestling, which I think we can all agree is horrible for the body. Like if you just look at some of these people, like their whole body's just held together with like twine, duct tape, and a little bit of like prayers, like, but you know, look at boxers' hands, man. Like the primary bone, and when you look at like all the metacarpals in the knuckles, like their knuckles are flat, like they have no top knuckle. Like I know in my left hand, the main bone has been cracked and broken so many times it never really properly knit itself together. So you can kind of like poke in my hand and hit muscle. You know, like it's you know, the military helped with this, but I've had 2 ACL replacements in my left knee, one in my right. You know, I've broken my orbital a few times. You know, and the thing is, you know, I wasn't Errol Spence and I wasn't, you know, Bud Crawford, you know, fuck, man. I wasn't even Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Right. But, you know, I was still getting checks at the end of fights. Right. And I couldn't put anything up my nose or into my veins because I was in the military, 1, and 2, I really wasn't into intravenous drug use. I was more like, hey, I'm going to go get fucking wasted because I don't have to cut for another fight for another like 4 or 5 months. Right. But what they don't teach you when you go into combat sports or professional wrestling is that, bruh, you're not going to get a lot of health care at first, especially if you're like an indie wrestler or you're fighting in, you know, the Agora in Cleveland in front of like 100 people, you know, that are just like, we're just here to watch you get knocked the fuck out, you short, gibbly looking fucker. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Right.
Which,
you know,
yeah.
but, you know, and so you never put any of that money away. I didn't have health insurance until I went and joined the military. And when I was at MEPS, they're like, what is wrong with your hands? Why have you broken your face so much? Why did you do, like, what is all this shit going on? You know? And it's just like, well, I boxed, you know, like, you know, but like nothing ever heals correctly. And you pay for that the rest of your fucking life. You really do.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not just boxing. It's a lot of, I mean, that's why the baseball players owe Kurt Flood so much and a lot of the big time professional sports. But like, I know a bunch of the old skate guys from back in the day, and you want to talk about people who are, their bodies are wrecked and have no health care.
Also murderers.
I mean, those guys, you know, and it's like, because I've known some of them, and then these kids will come up, they've seen an old video of them, and they're like, oh, you're a god. And, you know, this guy's like sleeping on somebody's couch.
Yeah.
And, you know, just trying to like chew enough aspirin to get up in the morning. And it's like, that's not cool.
Yeah, it's like when you look at the kids and you're like, yeah, that Quicksilver fucking sponsorship really works, dude. I live with my daughter. I'm 49.
We got one last call, guys. We got one last call. Caller in the 425. What is your name? Where are you calling from?
Sup.
Hey.
From the Salix Sea.
Oh, what's going on, Jeff?
So I'm going a bit back in your conversation about MMA in sports. There's actually a sport in Italy called Calcio Fiorentino, which is a soccer type sport. Only each side has 15 MMA fighters who basically just grow in the midfield before they even touch the ball. Everyone's wearing Landis Connect like shorts, like the puffy stripy things from the Renaissance area. And that starts with the cannon.
I saw this on a Netflix thing, I think.
That sounds more like
it's
LARPing.
Insane, right?
Right.
Yes, there's a Netflix thing about this shit. Yeah. It's insane.
I posted a video of a championship 2 years ago in the TIR Sports Discord and the Left Flank Bets also, if anyone wants to check it out.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Wait, post it on, if you're on Twitter, post it on Twitter, because I'm scared to go to Discord.
I'm scared to go to Discord.
I don't know how Twitter works, but
all the
yeah,
kids
that's all I
are on
had to say.
Discord.
Damn it. Okay. All right. Well, hey, thank you.
Listen, stop being boomers. It's called X now, okay?
Look, Mac, I can only take people telling me to go fuck myself on so many platforms. If you tell me to go fuck myself on Facebook and Twitter is your limit, you're not gonna. I paid money to tell you to go fuck yourself, Jason Miles.
You're gonna get a
Now,
super chat here.
It's not Twitter.
You're gonna get a super chat soon, Jason. That's like $20. Like, go fuck yourself, Jason.
That's how I know I made it. Like, I was watching this interview with Brandon Boyd today, and he was talking about the nebulous term of making it. He goes, "What is making it? Is it buying a house?" As he's doing it from his house. And I was like, "Yeah, motherfucker, that is making it." But making it is definitely having people pay to tell you to fuck off.
Oh God, dude! If I ever get that, if I ever get to that point, Jason, I'll be the happiest man alive.
Oh my God, if you paid me to tell me to go fuck myself, like just because of me, not because like I know somebody you don't like, but like literally because I said something to piss you off.
Yeah. Oh God, dude. I'll tell you what, man. I'll go fuck myself right now, and I'm gonna take that $20 you gave me and go buy a fucking beer, and I'll be fucking myself while I drink the beer, and then I'll be fucking myself as I leave a $5 tip. Like
it is an odd insult, isn't it? It's like I never thought about it that way, but go fuck yourself. Like, what's so bad about that?
At least I know how to do it correctly. Come on, man.
A-Tuber says having health insurance is making it. Oh, dude, if I was so hated that I had health insurance
and people paid to tell you to go fuck yourself, oh my God,
I can go fuck myself. Oh, you couldn't tell me shit.
Oh man,
that's how I would start every show. Hey, good morning, fuck you.
Yeah.
I have one quick question going back to sports. I don't know if you guys noticed. This is another obsession I've had recently. Is there's a lot of YouTube shows spending most of their time bashing Disney, and today was Disney's earnings call, and right before it, their big announcement was that ESPN just did a big gambling deal. And I thought, like, this is how you're going to save ESPN. There's something going on in this space, and that is the one thing about like the Paul brothers, all this stuff. I don't know if anybody knows what entertainment is anymore.
Entertainment. We talked about this on the last week's show, and I'll bring this up again. We've commodified every aspect of our life. That even sports entertainment, even sitting down and watching a game, has a monetary value. There's fantasy sports. Now you can gamble on everything. It's all about the prop bet. I used to listen to sports talk radio, and what sports talk radio was, back in my day, there wasn't even 24-hour sports talk radio. I had to get through.
Okay, boomer.
Your menthol cigarette smoking mama. How about that?
She like full flavor. Okay.
But I remember there was local sports talk, which was like 3 hours long, and it was going to be all about the San Francisco Giants. And it wasn't going to be about who they're fucking or drama in the locker room, but it was going to be about performance of players. It might have been about the minor league system, but it was going to be exactly what I wanted to hear as I was assorting my baseball cards by color and team and memorizing every statistic because I'm a fucking nerd. Like this is what it was. And now it's all gambling prepaid shows masquerading as sports shows. So you have your main shows from the affiliates and everything else is just a prepaid gambling show that's talking about action and juice. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about action. Tell me about the game.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is they've even commodified that because like you listen to those shows and they're like, well, if you want to know more about the statistical analysis, you can subscribe to my website for $15 a month. I'll break down batting average and walk rate. I'll do all this for you. And it's just like, dude, it's bad enough. I have to listen to you fucking flap your gums and literally tell me nothing.
Nothing.
Except just where the spread's at. But now you want me to pay $15 for the privilege of listening to you like fuck up batting average against BABIP and all the analytics.
Stone cold lead pipe block of the week.
You know, and it's just like, why? You know, and I do miss that. Like, it was kind of like a catch-22 when I moved down here. ESPN bought all these like local affiliates, like you were talking about, and like so you had ESPN Radio Cleveland. Fucking great, man. I got to listen to Rizzo, Goldhammer, you know, all the guys from Cleveland. Right now, it's a subscription model. I got to pay $7 just to have access to Cleveland radio.
That's wild,
right? Yeah, and you know, ESPN LA, you know, their big tentpole radio show was Max Kellerman and Marcellus Wiley, right? They had
I hate Max Kellerman.
Oh shit!
Don't want to fucking talk about
Bill.
Kellerman,
Bill
right?
is like, excuse me, where's your tea?
Right? Yeah. Right. So I there's only one like I can't even really call him like a boxing commentator because ESPN just kind of forced him into the role and he's bad at it and they keep putting him out there for certain fights. Stephen A. Smith, I think he's worse than Kellerman when it comes to calling fights. Like Stephen A. doesn't know shit about shit.
Does Stephen A. do fights?
Dude,
now?
when ESPN puts on Stephen A. called the Manny Pacquiao horn fight down in Australia.
Wow.
Oh, I couldn't watch that.
Right. And Stephen A. looked like he looked, sounded, and was lost all 9 rounds. You know, like, you know, dude, I'm fucking with you, dude.
Why do you hate Max Kellerman? Bill, I have to know, why do you hate? I'm gonna make you the whole screen. Why do you hate Max Kellerman? I know this is gonna be some personal shit. I love it.
Why do I hate Max Kellerman? Because he's that kid you hated in high school who knew everything but doesn't know anything, and somehow he's like the teacher's pet, you know, at some point in sports talk. I just don't think he knows what he's talking about, and then he keeps talking.
Yeah. Like if I want to read or listen to somebody talk about boxing, I'll listen to Chris Mannix or Dan Rayfield. And outside of that, you know, those are the 2 writers I will read and listen to. You know?
As much as what's his face was getting more and more drunk at the end. Who was the guy that used to
Larry
do the
Merchant.
color on HBO? Yeah, Larry Merchant at least knew boxing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, as the fight went on, he was going to get like less coherent. But you know, so's your you know, uncle at Thanksgiving. So,
Which
Usually my house is my
I told
mom.
Jason. I did say, hey, I have a hard deadline, and
Oh shit.
but
Okay.
I do want to say, because it seems like there's some things that like kind of hit over and over and over again through this fantastic discussion that I enjoyed a whole lot. And I think it does, you know, hey, I'm gonna do the hot take lefty on motherfucking YouTube and blame capitalism. Well, there's so many issues that come up, whether it's the promoters or the payouts and all of these things that really come down to focusing on profit over the sport, over the athletes, over not just how many seats you can pack in, but what are people watching? You know, are you actually enriching somebody's life with entertainment, or are you just getting them addicted to something that, you know, is just trash fucking TV? And I think with the Logan and Jake Paul, the fucking motherfuckers from Ohio, I guess as some people know them, it seems to me it is a lot more of just fandom, spectacle, nonsense that is just a reiteration, you know, or at least, or some type of, you know, just influencer nonsense, you know. And like, I don't know how to kind of like lay it over on something that's happened previous, right? But it's just a mixture of so many things. So, you know, whereas reality television, streaming, you know, the like fucking the Kardashians, you know, it's like it's all of that, plus the societal breakdown of sport, of of communal activity. You know, it's a mixture of things where it's like, for one thing, we're all staring at the jingly keys that's got fentanyl poisoning in it, you know, and we're we're ignoring, yeah, you know, like the people around us and the organizations that actually enriched people's lives, which was the, hey, I got this badass kid, and guess what? You're getting your ass drugged to the boxing gym, you know. Where that's where it's like, I grew up playing sports. Like, I don't remember life without playing fucking, you know, I was like playing soccer and baseball as a little fucking kid. But like, that doesn't happen unless there are leagues that, I mean, literally, like, my parents fucking moved from Jamaica, New York. My dad was in the army, like, all over. And it's like, well, there's signs, there's people letting people know, there's sitting in the newspaper, you know, there's the teacher at the fucking place says, hey, your fucking kid is annoying as hell and will not stop running around. Can you get this little bastard in soccer? Oh yeah, here's the okay, here's the go here. There's the number for you. Let this motherfucker run around a little more. And that's where, you know, with so many options too, right?
Marcus
That's
is
like,
drawing on his own experience because he was that annoying kid.
I've got so many scars in my forehead. If you look, it's not HD camera, but it's like, from me just running as fast as I can and running into some shit. Like, I just didn't stop.
That was just as that's just as
He was the only black kid out there. Marcus was the only black kid out there every time he ran into a kid. Lord of mercy.
Lord of mercy. But no, like, at the end of the day, because, and this is where what's, you know, it could be sad. It's like, boxing could be something that is just like there and gone, right? Like, you know, the little ring, the metal ring with the stick that you chase down, right? But if people see value in taking, you know, in engaging in a sport, you know, that's what makes it continue. And that's where it's like, I play football. I love football. There's a lot of wrong shit with the sport of football. There's a lot of wrong shit with the sport of football, you know. But that's, you know, like, is it salvageable? I think so, yeah. Right? Is, you know, and like, you know, you can, so is you know, like, I think with like people who are serious about boxing, you know, ask yourself, is it salvageable? And then how do you salvage it? I don't think Jake Paul is the answer, though. You know,
I agree with you, and I'll tell you, and you know, Max may will hopefully agree with me. But one of the things I liked about going to the boxing gym was that they actually do have, weirdly enough, a code of honor, and there's rules there at the boxing gym, and there's a community there, and boxing was one of these things that always attracted kind of the misfit toys, but it gave them like structure and a place to go. And you know, I'll tell this one story real quick. But one time when Manny Pacquiao was blowing up, there's a hotshot ESPN crew came in to film him, and this guy was a producer, and he was just walking around the gym. And at one point, he went over and he turned off the music, and suddenly the entire gym turned, and it got silent. And he looked at me and he goes, "What did I just do?" And I go, "You turned the champ's music off." And he goes, "You're not supposed to do that." I go, "Oh no." And we put the music back on. Manny said it was cool. We put the Shakira back on. But, the weirdest thing was, after that, this big hotshot producer, he wouldn't do anything in the gym without asking me, like, if I do this, are they going to be mad? Because had Manny said kill him, it would have been over for me, you know? But that's the thing about the gym. It has rules. The music that's on is the champ's music, you know? Anyway, that waxing romantic sort of, but it's a funny story.
Bill,
so
you hit the nail on the head. You really did. That was the boxing gym, and there was a pecking order, but it wasn't like an abusive one. Not like in my experience. Like, we had a kid who was fighting for one of the regional belts, and Bill could tell you, out of the 4 organizing bodies, they have their own regional champs, and it's kind of like a stepping stone to where you get up to the actual championship, right? And this kid, 18-0, phenomenal fighter, the lightest guy in the gym. He fought at 126. But he was great. You know, he was 23 years old, and he kind of filled that Manny spot in my gym, you know, and dude literally had like Biggie, Tupac, and Wu-Tang just on constant like loop. Like that's what we listened to train, right? And you didn't mess with his music. And the thing is like he knew he was the draw there. But like he would come down and let me know, like, yo, Mac, like you're dropping your hands too much. It's gonna leave your, you know, you're gonna be open for crosses and jabs, you know, so get your hand up. Like, and that's what we did. We passed that down. Like we worked with everybody else in the gym that was like on, I guess, on a lower level than you. So you passed the knowledge down, and it was a great experience. Like I love boxing to this day. And if I wasn't an old fuck, I would actually go and start fighting again. But I'm old and my back's all fucked up. And like I told you last week, Jason, I get hit in the face. I'm down for 2 days. Like I'm talking.
Trying to get in the face,
like that's it. I'm not trying to do this shit anymore, right?
Hilarious.
You know, but like, you know, it is a phenomenal sport. And Marcus, I think you're right as well. How do we salvage this? And honestly, I'm cynical about it. I don't think boxing will be salvaged. The unfortunate thing is promoters have really made it hard to see these great fights. You know, Spence and Crawford, that was like a 1 in a million shot of that even fucking happening. That's a fight that's been like 8 years in the works. You know, like until we can break a deadlock on these fucking promoters, like it'll never happen. It won't.
Well, look,
you know,
I'm going to leave you with some hope. I live in Mexico, and I'm constantly shocked at the sports young people play. And all hours of the night, there's kids running with their hands wrapped because there's a boxing gyms around here, and they're training. And it's a beautiful, to me, it's a beautiful thing to see, right? Because it does keep the sport alive on a very kind of grassroots level.
Yeah, and it's great to see until you get a fucking 8-year-old kid to punch your head.
That's all I need.
All I heard is that
yes, all I need is a fucking.
Jason is training the future border stormers. President Trump. President Trump is going to be. I heard him. This communist. His name is Jason. He was talking. They're training him. They're going to storm the border. Yeah.
Can you just imagine? All right, we got to stop before we get canceled. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll be discussing with Steven DeCastro, a filmmaker who spent, I think it was a year or at least 6 months in with a rebel Filipino Maoist sect. And he made a film about it. And I'm going to watch it and we're going to talk about it. Hopefully we can play some clips from it. And I'm really excited for that show. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Thank you, Bill, Mac. Thank you so much, Marcus, for coming last minute. It's always a pleasure. And we are out.